very good morning to all of you and a warm welcome to my webinar on aligning incentives in supply chains, a practical approach. You call it align or realign, it's up to you. But in any case, you just go through this and understand how the incentives are shared in a supply chain. This I did not repeat, so you can go through it. And what is incentive? So if you ask somebody that what is incentive, now what answer you should get? Incentive is basically a stimulant, or it's in the form of cash or a reward which motivates you to perform more or supply more or produce more. So we can say that it is basically a payment or concession that motivates or encourages someone to do something. It's a stimulant to greater output, isn't it? And once we know the incentive, so we can, before we go into the details, I would suggest that you go through this article of Aligning Incentives in Supply Chains by Professor Narayanan and Anant Raman. Anant Raman is the author for the Toyota Production System. So if you go through their articles, you'll have a fair idea. So after you go through this webinar, you'll be able to study this and understand in deep that how it is working. So when would your supply chain work well? So if you look at any supply chain anywhere in the world, three things are very, very important. If you are working in a supply chain, what are the things you always look for? You incur certain costs and you expect some rewards out of it, and you take some risks. So you incur some costs, you take some risks, and you expect some rewards. So these are the three things which you will have to take care when you are working in a supply chain. And this must be aligned. So what are the risks, costs, and rewards? Any supply chain will work well if the risks, costs, and rewards of doing business are distributed fairly across the supply chain or network. So where are we? Any misalignment of incentives of these factors, risks, costs, and rewards, results in excess inventory, stockouts, and even poor customer service. So how many of you are listening? Now, why incentive-related issues arise? Now, the question comes, why this incentive-related issue problems arise? It arises because of the fact that it is very difficult to persuade anybody until unless you know certain information. You know certain information about the other company. So it means, therefore it means poor visibility. As a result of this, all the companies, they were working in silos, sitting separately. Nobody knows what is happening. A manufacturer doesn't know what retailer is doing. Retailer doesn't know what customer is doing. If you assume the situation is like this, one has the information which the other does not have, then what they will do? They will try to maximize their own profit, and as a result of that, supply chain profitability suffers. Incentive schemes are badly designed, punishment if you perform, and no reward if you succeed. Now, do you feel that this type of incentive schemes will work? I remember one incident in my life in TBS group, when I was working in a TBS group, there we wanted to get a die casting die made by a company in Coimbatore within 45 days. Now the supplier I said that he will not be able to supply within 60 days, and he can give it only on 45th day. I'm sorry, he cannot supply on before 60th day, but whereas our requirement was 45 days. And our finance manager, he said that I am going to punish the supplier because he's late by 15 days, that is for 60 minus 45. I said, if you punish the supplier for not supplying the die, which he is not agreeing, he agrees for 60 days. Then I said, why don't you give him a reward? So I'll give him, I told the supplier that I'll give you a reward of 5% if you supply it within 45 days, and if you supply on 60th day, I will deduct something from 5%. I will deduct from your the price. Now, when you worked out this, that was the first time in TBS group that I have included punishment as well as reward in the purchase order. And this is what is alignment of incentives. Even I can cite this, the global scenario. When the steel is going to US, there is no import duty, but when we are importing steels from US, we are paying almost 60 or 70%, I don't recollect, duty. Now, will this work for a long time, this type of incentives? So will it work for a long time? Because there is no alignment. We are not working in the same level playing field. We do not have level playing field. So this will not work. This may work for some time, but ultimately it will not work. It will fail. So what is the solution? Please accept that there is a problem. Pinpoint the cause, hidden info or hidden action. Align or realign the incentives. Always remember that incentives are to be aligned, realigned from time to time. One incentive may not be valid for a long time. Rewrite contracts so that it ensures that it works in the best interest of supply chain. Use personal relationship to build trust with the supply chain person. So personal relationship is very, very important, and most of the managers, I find that they are not being trained on personal relationship with the suppliers or with the customers. So how to prevent, therefore, how to prevent the incentive problems? You must conduct incentive audits from time to time. You must educate the managers. So as I said, that education is very, very important. And making discussions less personal. You should not take it as a personal case and asking executives to examine problems of other companies. I remember one thing in my life, that's when I used to get a lot of materials from my suppliers, and when they used to come to me for negotiation, I was also supplying to Maruti. We were supplying to Maruti, and they were also supplying to Maruti. In fact, what rate my supplier is supplying to Maruti or Tata Motors, those informations I had with me before I start the negotiation. So informations you must have, and a manager must be trained on how to collect the information and how to get maximum information before you go for negotiation. So what is the ultimate goal? Therefore, what is the ultimate goal? If properly aligned, every member will get the benefit. Supply chain profit will go higher. So we are going to now we are going to demonstrate that for a two-stage supply chain, two companies, this phenomenon is true. The situation becomes complicated if you consider three suppliers or three entities, but for the time being, we will be concentrating on two-stage supply chain. So how do you align or misalign incentives? Therefore, the question comes, how do you align? it is high time that I will look at the contracts. Have you checked or rechecked your contracts? Unless you recheck your contracts, you will be losing your profit. Therefore, the question comes, why contracts are important? It's better to build up a relationship with the suppliers. Effective procurement strategies require relationship. So far the relationship is concerned, I will put Japanese people on the top of the world because they know how to maintain the relationship with the suppliers. Most of the countries, Western countries or American companies, they think that suppliers are adversaries. I have worked in US, and so I know how they treat the suppliers. Suppliers is they as if they always keep arm's length relationship, and they never consider them as partners in progress. To ensure adequate supplies and timely deliveries, both supplier and buyer enter into formal or informal relationship known as contracts. So this is the contracts is a relationship. It may be formal, but I prefer formal relationship. This contract addresses issues that arise between the supplier and the manufacturer, whether he is an OEM or a manufacturer purchasing a raw material from a supplier or anything else. In a typical supply chain contract, the buyer and the supplier should agree on many factors or many things, which I'm going to highlight in the next slide. Pricing and volume decisions, minimum and maximum purchase quantities, delivery lead times, product or material quality, product returns policies, sharing of revenue if any, raw material fluctuation clause. You must include raw material fluctuation clause, exchange rate fluctuation clause. These are things, main things which are included in the contracts. There are so many other things, but I'm not going into details of those. We'll be concentrating mainly on pricing and volume decision, minimum, maximum purchase quantities, and sharing of revenue. So we are now considering two-stage supply chain as we discussed, and it's a trade-off between overstocking and understocking. Initially, we'll consider only a manufacturer who is manufacturing for a customer, and how much he will manufacture. Either he should overstock or understock. Overstocking means he will be stocking more than the demand, and understocking means he will be stocking less than the demand. So it's a trade-off. So we'll revisit the news vendor model, single period demand. I'll just briefly explain what is this. Demand less than equal to what you have ordered is the cost of overstocking. That means you have stocked more than the demand. Should be less than equal to probability of demand greater than Q into cost of understocking. So cost of overstocking multiplied by the probability of demand is less than Q should be less than equal to probability demand greater than Q multiplied by cost of understocking. I did not explain, you have learned this thing in your MBA studies, and it is applicable anywhere. And those who have gone through the Harvard global supply chain simulation game, they must have done this thing. Therefore, next step, D greater than Q, we can replace it by 1 minus P. 1 minus P demand is less than Q, and if you transpose, you will get probability of D less than equal to Q is understocking cost divided by understocking cost plus overstocking cost. So this is the formula, main formula, which will be used in all the contracts we will be discussing now. So this is the manufacturer, he's one single agent, and whatever you say that it is a centralized manufacturing, that means retailer, distributor, everything is under his control. He supplies directly to the customer. So selling price 125 each, cost of production 35 each, salvage value 20 each, means whatever leftover stock is can sell at 20 rupees. So cost of understocking is 90 rupees, which is nothing but 125 minus 35. And cost of overstocking is 15, which is 35 minus 20, so it is 15. And he has got a setup cost 100,000 rupees. So what should be the optimum quantity he should produce? Using the same formula, 90 by 15 plus 90 is equal to 0.85. That means he can, since his cost of overstocking is very, very less compared to the cost of understocking, he can stock a very high quantity. So he will be, therefore, he will be nearly 16,000 pieces, which we can get from the distribution chart. So we got 0.85 in the previous calculation. Therefore, 0.85 will take slightly over that, and it will be 16,000 pieces. So they should go for 16,000 pieces. Now, if it takes 16,000 pieces, that is optimum quantity, he will earn certain profit, which will be maximum. But if he produces 8,000 or 10,000 or 12,000, 14,000 and 18,000, then what will be the picture? So we'll calculate for each one, and this is the diagram I have drawn for you. So therefore, the wholesale price of 80 rupees is not valid here. So the maximum profit under these circumstances is 10,14,500 for 16,000 pieces. For other quantity, suppose he manufactures 10,000, 12,000, 14,000 or 18,000, his profit will be much less. That we are going to show in a figure. Now here, for production of 16,000 pieces, how the calculation has been done, I have shown it here. So profit for the manufacturer, it is expected profit. So it is expected profit for the manufacturer is probability of demand is 8,000 multiplied by 0.11, probability of demand 10,000 multiplied by 0.11. So all the probabilities I have added up, multiplied by the demand into for different demands. This is the picture I'm getting, and for each one, suppose I'll just tell you one area where the demand is only 8,000 pieces, whereas he has procured 16,000. He has manufactured 16,000 pieces. If he procures, if he manufactures 16,000 pieces, so his production cost is 35 into 16,000. Whereas his revenue is 125 into 8,000 because he is able to sell 8,000. And setup cost is there, minus 10,000. And salvage costs for 8,000 pieces, which is he is not able to sell, he is going to get 20 rupees each. And so whole thing multiplied by 0.11 probability of demand coming 8,000 is 0.11. He gets this picture. Similarly, for 10,000, you will be left with 6,000 pieces stock. For 12,000, he will have 4,000. For 14,000, you will have 2,000 stock, and for 16,000 onwards, you will not have any stock. Therefore, it comes to 10,14,500. If we calculate the profit, if you see the graph, it looks like this. You will attain the maximum profit. The manufacturer attains the maximum profit at 16,000 pieces, which is quite true. So now we are coming to supply chain contracts with somebody sitting in between who is not owned by the manufacturer. That means It is a decentralized supply chain. We call it decentralized in the supply chain um, articles. It's called decentralized supply chain instead of centralized supply chain. So previously we discussed centralized supply chain, that means everything is under one manufacturer, but here it is owned by different companies. So these supply chain contracts help the organization achieve global optimization. We can get maximum profit when we are operating under one ownership. So if it is a centralized supply chain, then only we'll earn the maximum profit. But if we work separately, then we'll not get the profit we desire. So objective is to go as far as possible towards the global supply chain profit. So carefully designed supply contracts achieve the same profit as global optimization profit. And as a result, the total supply chain profit increases as well as the individual entity profit. These contracts ensure that incentives are really aligned and chances of conflict drastically comes down. So that is why these supply chain contracts are very, very important. So traditional contracts, manufacturer takes no risk and the buyer takes all the risk by stocking materials. So there are three agents, entities: manufacturer, retailer, and customer. So retailer is sitting here, retailer gets the demand from the customer and accordingly he procures from the manufacturer. Therefore, retailer takes all the risk by stocking the material. Retailer is stuck between the devil and the deep sea. Manufacturer wants more orders, but retailer said nothing doing. I'll not supply you more than an optimum value. So what is the optimum value? We can easily calculate it using the same formula: understocking, cost of understocking, cost of overstocking. And manufacturer, what they're doing, they're taking MTO strategy. What is MTO strategy? MTO strategy is nothing but make to order strategy. So retailer does not budge because the risk of overstocking, he maximizes his profit by ordering the optimum quantity, as I said. We take the same example with two agents and same forecast for demand, which we showed earlier. The picture is like this: traditional contract, sale price is 125 and wholesale price is 80, salvage value is 20, and manufacturing cost is 35 for the manufacturer. So this wholesale price is called transfer price. So what is the maximum profit we can calculate? We can calculate the profit. So expected profit, as we calculated for the manufacturer in the centralized case, same way we can calculate. And you can see 4,70,000 for the expected profit for the retailer, and similarly expected profit for the manufacturer is he will be producing 12,000 components, so 12,000 multiplied by 18, 35. That means for an optimum quantity of 12,000, which retailer has calculated and found that is the optimum value, and this is the values for individual profits. And the total profit comes to 9,170, 9,10,700, and how we have calculated is shown here. Here you see that cost of overstocking is higher than cost of understocking. 45 is understocking cost, overstocking cost is 60. So it comes to 0.43. Now if you calculate the cumulative probability, you will land at 12,000. So retailer will never go out of 12,000. He will try to restrict his purchase within 12,000 pieces. However, cajoling or incentive will give, he will not move out from this. So retailer profit, the retailer's profit, if you calculate for each scenario, you will get that it is maximum at 12,000 pieces. But manufacturer wants more. Manufacturer says, I am not satisfied. I'll have to fill up the capacity of my plant. So I want something more. Maybe I want 14,000 or 16,000, and I want to make more profit. You'll have to go for new contract. So what is that contract? It's called buyback contract. So manufacturer now in turn takes more risk and provide more incentive to retailer by improve the overstocking cost. Here, manufacturer is trying to reduce the overstocking cost of the supplier, of the purchaser. And the moment retailer understands that his cost of overstocking is coming less, he will be delighted and he will order more. But how much more? So that is, you'll have to go for the buyback contract and see how it works out. Manufacturer, what he said, that I will take the unsold items from you at the rate of 55 rupees. You will not have to sell at 20 rupees. So retailer is delighted. He said that, okay, fine. Then I can consider increasing my offtake. So let us see how it works out. What is the maximum profit supply chain can achieve under these circumstances? Expected profit of retailer, we use the same formula, but with a little bit of calculations. I'll explain for one scenario. 8,000 into 125, if it is optimum is 14,000, 18 into 14,000 he has procurement value, and 6,000 he is returning, and for that he is getting back 55 rupees from the manufacturer. So for each scenario I have calculated, it comes to 5,13,800, and expected profit for the manufacturer will be, is produced 14,000 into 80 minus 35, and for the expected return from the retailer, he has already paid 55 rupees at the rate of 55 rupees. So that will be subtracted from his revenue, from his profit, and 100,000 for the setup cost, and another value he is getting back by selling the expected quantity, expected return quantity in the discounted market. So that is what he is gaining by this. So 1660 pieces are expected to be returned by the retailer, and he will be getting a money for his 20 rupees salvage value into 1660, but at the same time he has to pay to the retailer this 55 rupees he has already paid to the retailer. And so the value, therefore value for manufacturer, it comes to 4,71,900, and the total profit comes to 9,857,000. So it is still higher, and the individual profits have also gone high, which is available from these calculations. And if you see this chart, so 45 by 45 by 25, his cost of overstocking has considerably come down, so he has shifted from 12,000 to 14,000 pieces. So total supply chain profit has increased, individual profits has also increased. Therefore, the graphs, if you draw them for 14,000, retailer will be maximum and manufacturer's profit will go like this. So can I think of a contract which would take the profit still closer to global optimum? For your benefit, I just made a contract with some free items for the retailer. I wanted the retailer to take slightly more. I wanted to ensure that the retailer gets more profit, and This is just, I designed this contract and see how it works out. So I said that buyback contract remains the same with free items at the rate of 1%. That means 140 pieces I will give you free of cost. Plug in sell. So this is the calculations I have done for you. And this is a little bit tricky, but if you go through it carefully, you will be able to understand. And if you don't understand, you can always contact me for any clarifications. So here it is coming 463. So manufacturer sacrifices a little bit, but expected profit of retailer has gone up substantially. So that is what is shown here. It is exactly same as buyback contract. But manufacturer is not satisfied, so he wants more production. He wants retailer to stock more. So can he do something to stimulate the retailer to lift more? He calls for a meeting with the retailer. When the retailer comes, he says that I will not make any profit in my manufacturing. You will have to give me a part of your revenue to me, by which I will compensate my profit. But will you be successful? Let's watch. This is revenue sharing contract. Sales price 125. Everything is same. Wholesale price is just see, wholesale price 80 has been reduced to 35, and his cost of production is 35 for the manufacturer. Therefore, he is not making any profit on manufacturing, but he says that retailer should return 35% of the revenue to me. So what is the maximum profit supply chain can achieve under the same circumstances? Let us see. Profit calculations is given here the same way I did for the. Here the beauty is that manufacturer doesn't make profit because his cost of production is 35, he sells at 35. What he is earning is 35% of revenue. That means whatever, this is the expected revenue for the retailer, and out of that 35% of 18,81,000, 25,000 is 5,64,375, which he is getting back from the retailer. From here, he is getting back. And manufacturer's profit goes to 464,375 and retailer. So it is still higher, and the overall scenario is slightly higher. And it has in fact reached the global optimum value. This contract has been designed in such a way that it has reached the maximum value, and manufacturer as well as the retailer both are getting the maximum profit. And how 16,000 pieces have been found out? So it is quite obvious from here, 90 by 90 plus 15. And it is 0.86. If you look at the demand distribution, it comes to 0.185, comes to 16,000, slightly above 0.85 is 0.9. Since it's a discrete distribution, so we have 0.9 figure, so I'll take 0.9, and so 16,000 pieces. That is how we calculate it. So therefore, revenue sharing contract profit goes like this for the retailer. Retailer goes like this, but for the manufacturer it is almost constant because he's not making profit in manufacturing. So 10,14,500 was the original profit when it was the whole supply chain was operating in a centralized fashion. This is the comparative chart for all the contracts: traditional contract, buyback contract with free items. global operations. So this is, and therefore optimum purchase quantity going on varying, and it is fixed 16,000 pieces with revenue sharing, which we have achieved in global. And profit, it goes on increasing. The total supply chain profit has gone very high. Supplier is hugely benefited, although manufacturer is more or less constant. So what is the lesson learned? If contracts are properly aligned, all members are benefited. Total supply chain profit increases, and you can design in such a way that it reaches the global optimization value. Production also increases, and retailer stocks more. So manufacturer is able to increase his production, remember, and he is able to utilize his machineries much better than what he was doing earlier. His production increases and he's happy, and retailer stocks more because this manufacturer has taken certain risk with him. Risk shifts from buyer to seller gradually by sharing the relevant information. So if informations are not shared, then this was not possible. Customer price is not affected, and more customers are satisfied. Another example from the article of Professor Narayan, which I mentioned in the beginning, that in the Harvard Review, a printer or publisher, he publishes at the rate of 45 cents per copy, his manufacturing cost, and sells them to news vendor at 80 cents each. The newspaper retails at $1 each. And here the distribution is uniform between 100 to 200 copies per day. That means probability of demand being 110, 120, 130, 140, all are 0.1. That means I have divided into 10 segments. So it comes like this. So red one gives the cumulative probability, and the blue one gives the failure. So why not an example between a publisher and a retailer? This is how we have calculated. I have shown the calculation. Probability 0.2, 0.31, 0.50, 0.55 for global supply chain, and markdown money contract is 0.50. Revenue sharing contract, you please go through the article, you will be able to understand now after I have explained all these things. And still they designed the incentives, but they were not able to reach the global optimum values. Anyway, they have tried their best to reach as close as possible. So publisher's dilemma, revenue share contract improved the result but still fell short of global optimum. Markdown money contract improved the results further and brought the total cost close to global optimum. And customer is not affected, who are paying the same price. And customer satisfaction you can get with inventory level going up. So once therefore we have gone through the contracts for strategic items, the various contracts. There are many other contracts, but anyway, this because of the shortage of time, I will not be able to explain other contracts. But these are the main contracts which are used in real life. There are some contracts for non-strategic items also. So long-term contract, fixed commitment made in advance, you must have come across in your factory or organization. Option contract, prepay certain reservation price for the option to purchase. And then when you execute, it is called execution price. So if you option price plus execution price, reservation price plus execution price will be slightly higher than long-term contract price. Flexible contract, we contract certain quantity, but thing is that we keep plus minus 7%, plus minus 10% or 5%, like that. Spot market, we go to spot market. I remember when he used to procure aluminum alloy from the global markets. We used to go for long-term contract for certain quantities. We used to purchase around 500 tons, so we used to go for around 300 tons long-term contract and 200 tons for the spot market. And portfolio is a mix of the above. So long-term bulk contract or spot market for non-strategic items. I have just given one example from Sunil Chopra's book, which will be very useful for you. A manufacturer purchases components from a supplier from overseas. He has to decide the strategy for transportation of materials either through bulk contract or the spot market. He's trying to transport the materials. Now, factory demand for consumption on average is 500 million units per month with a standard deviation of 15. So he knows the distribution. Bulk contract price is 800,000 per million units per month, and the spot market price is 1. So if he takes the trucks from the spot market, he will have to pay this much. So what should be the optimum quantity to purchase for placing an order on bulk contract? So it's a little bit of calculations, how to calculate the probability. Now, the marginal cost of purchasing another unit in bulk contract, suppose Q star is the demand that is met with the bulk contract. And P star the probability that the demand does not exceed Q. So demand is always less than Q. Then the marginal cost of not purchasing another unit in bulk and then purchasing in the spot market should be 1 minus P star into stock market cost. So if the optimum amount is purchased using the bulk contract, the marginal cost of bulk purchase should be equal to marginal cost of spot market purchase. Otherwise, we'll put it like this: CP, that is bulk cost, is equal to 1 minus probability of demand does not exceed Q whole into stock CS. So from where we can get the value of P star, which is spot market price minus spot market cost minus bulk cost divided by spot cost. If this ratio is determined, suppose this is an example, the cost of long-term bulk contract is 800,000 million per unit per month, as we say. Similarly, CS is given. The probability of demand is less than Q, we can calculate 0.428. Now, if you put it in Excel and find out normal distributions, if we do it, 0.428, 500 is the average and 50 is the standard deviation, it comes to 491 million units. Therefore, the purchaser should sign a long-term contract of 491 million units, say 500 million units, for transportation of materials using the long-term bulk contract. If the demand is 600, he will go for 500 long-term contract and 100 million from the spot market to minimize his loss. I just took out a graph which I plotted for you. Suppose it is less than 500, he will say 400 million is the demand, then in that case he will lose because he will have to pay for 500 million, and as a result of that, per unit cost will come down, per unit cost will go up. So the graph goes like this and again moves up like this. So there is a minimum point which is 500 million units per month. Similarly, I have found that HP, Hewlett-Packard, they also go for portfolio contract, 50% long contract, 35% in option contract, and balance in spot market. So therefore, you have to deal with inventory risk, price risk, as well as the shortage risk. So all this risk you will have to take into account when deciding this portfolio contract. So what is the risk trade-off in portfolio contracts? You can have the option level very high, base commitment level very low, or you can have very low option level and high commitment level, but you cannot have very high optional level and very high commitment level. So that is not applicable. So for a given situation, either the optional level or the base commitment level may be high but not both. As a result of this, inventory risk for the supplier, it is an inventory risk for the supplier when base commitment is low, optional level is high. And the bottom two quadrants, the risk is for the buyer. But this is an example that I brought it from Sunil Chopra's book. So this is what we have learned from this webinar. To ensure adequate supplies and timely deliveries in new normal situation, post-COVID situation, it is suggested that buyer and supplier rewrite supply chain contracts. So all contracts, you will have to relook at it and then rewrite it. It is a powerful tool to achieve enhanced profit levels, better management of trade-off between cost and risk, avoidance of naked profiteering by suppliers. Suppliers sometimes may ditch you, so be very, very careful. Motivation of the supply chain parties to reveal the true forecast of customer demand. Sometimes it is hidden, which is not correct. And shaping of the demand, higher prices for scarce products and vice versa. You can do these things post-pandemic situation. And prioritization of the customers. You will have to prioritize the customers once you come out of this pandemic situation. You cannot satisfy each one. If you try to satisfy everyone, you satisfy nobody. So be very, very careful to prioritize the customers. How you prioritize, that depends on you. And you're dealing with the customer. So good luck for your effort in realigning incentives. And quote of the day, knowledge leads you to light and imagination lets you to grow. References, these are the references which you can go through it if you are really interested. And thank you very much for listening, for having patience to listen to my lecture.